To order here. This is the April 8th, 2021 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee, and it is now, what time is it now? 2:31. So, Craig, can you do roll call for me, please?
Will. Mr. Van Hove?
Present.
Mr. Stitchick?
Present.
Ms. Kilcoyne?
Present.
Mr. Lindemood?
Present.
Ms. Acton? Not sure if Bart, are you acting for her today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, we still have a quorum without that, so we'll just continue on. Ms. McNulty?
Here.
I believe I'm correct in saying I'm calling Mr. Boland now.
Yeah, correct. Present.
Okay, Mr. Rebuffo is excused. Mr. Colhayes?
Here.
Mr. Alimi?
Present.
And Mr. Craps. So we definitely have a quorum.
Thank you. Can you please do the public involvement announcement for me, please?
Yes, sir. All AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have presentation by a staff or a consultant, and then the committee will be given a chance to discuss the matter. And then after that, we will be inviting the public to comment. As you know, we are doing this, public is through Teams Live, and so there's that delay. So we'll ask Christine to double check if there are public comments, and we'll just wait for that little 45 seconds as we switch over to make sure.
Thank you. And we're off to approval of the agenda.
This is Matt Stitchick. I move to approve the agenda as is.
I second it. Todd Van Hove, second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any changes?
So, Kent Colhayes, John, I'm not sure if this is the right time to bring this up, but I'll just throw it out and we can talk about it and figure out when to do this. And it's regarding the Spenard Road project, and specifically the current limits of the project and the discussion that some folks have been part of, the discussion regarding expanding the limits of the project to the west side of Minnesota to allow the project to at least consider the various lane drop configurations that may benefit pedestrian and bike pedestrian and bike facilities on the east side to account for the right-of-way constrictions near that existing building. So I don't know if that's if I make a motion to add that to the agenda before we move to the action item on the TIP amendment, or what. I guess I'm throwing it out as a question right now.
So, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that since we already have on our agenda Mr. Baskey from DOT, who's the project manager for the project at Spenard Road, we have it as an info item. I would suggest if we change the order of the day after we approve the agenda, and then just bring this item up first, which is item 6B, and then we can get information from Mr. Baskey, and then go back to the action items for the TIP amendment, and we'll have the information we need to move on and make an informed decision. That's my suggestion. I think that means we wouldn't have to change the agenda. We would just approve the agenda as is, and then just change the order and bring up 6B first.
Okay, so what you're saying is I don't need a motion and a second to move 6B to in front of 5.
I would suggest that the cleanest way to do it is approve the agenda as written, and then just change the order when we get to the actual action items, and just switch around a little bit. I guess I would defer to Lori Blake, but I would suggest that that's in line with parliamentary procedures.
All right, so we're gonna, why don't we just go with the motion? Kent, if you could just make a motion to move 6B to in front of our action item 5. And if we can get a second, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, Kent Colhays, I move to move item 6B up in the agenda to come before item 5 action items.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
This is Matt Stichik. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that change? Okay, are there any objections to approving that amendment? Okay, then that amendment to the agenda is approved. We are back to approval of the agenda with the amendment. Is there any objection to approving the agenda with the amendment? Well, as is with the change. All right, hearing none, then the agenda is approved. We're going to. Oh, I forgot. Oh. Okay, so we have a change on the agenda, and now we're on to, we have March 11th, is this correct?
Yes.
The March 11th, 2021 minutes for approval and adoption.
This is Todd Van Hove, move to approve.
This is DME Halimi, a second.
Thank you. Do we have any changes? Are there any objections to adopting the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the March 11th, 2021 minutes are approved. And now we are on to 6B. Craig, can you go ahead and give us an introduction on 6B, please?
Well, I will be happy to turn it over to Sean Baskey, who will present on the Spenard Road rehab project, which is in our current tip. So, and there you go.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Am I coming across okay?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. So Sean Baskey, I'm a project manager with the Department of Transportation. So today we're talking about the Spenard Minson to Minnesota AMATS funded project. So just this is the first time you guys have seen this project, from the project team. So I'll just cover a bunch of ground real quickly and get onto the meat of the matter. So previous phases of the project, so phase 1 and phase 2 north of Benson were constructed by the municipality of Anchorage, 2009 to 2010 for phase 1, phase 2, 2017 to 18. And now before you, we've got a federally funded project. And so that's the unique distinction between them, but a collaborative effort between the municipality of Anchorage and the Department of Transportation funded through AMATS. There's been a lot of work in the past to get us to this point, and a lot of community efforts. And so we're excited to be a part of delivering this project to the community. So project purpose is rooted in, same kind of thing that was in previous phases. And so trying to address, safety concerns, largely for pedestrian and bicyclists, and then of course for vehicles. We've got some failing infrastructure in the space as well. So absolutely a great project from a purpose and need standpoint. The existing space, as you look through there, just to make sure we're all on the same page, we got a winding roadway, a lot of intersecting streets, some signalized intersections, and 8,000 to 10,000 vehicles per day running through it. Certainly less than north of Northern Lights and Benson, but still a good swath of vehicular traffic. We got 4 lanes running through that space, 35-mile-an-hour design speed, and 60 to 80 feet of right-of-way. And so you'll quickly see soon about what that right of way looks like. But what we've heard from the community, and we've gone out and experienced it ourselves, anybody that's driven down or walked down that space, it's a very uncomfortable thing to try to get down. Transit facilities are hard to use. Just an overall not pleasant experience for people walking or biking through the space. And then from a vehicular standpoint, the standard left lane becomes a left turn pocket kind of situation quite often. So again, lots of difficulties getting through the space comfortably. We've heard a lot of things from the public. We've had an open house. We've gone to the community council. We've talked about a lot of things, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but we've heard a lot about people wanting to integrate more bikeability, more walkability, a more transit friendly space, and then certainly a lot of other concerns about business impacts, right away kinds of things, and an overall desire to revitalize the area. So there's a lot of things to consider as we move forward on the project. Right now, we're still in the environmental phase, analyzing alternatives, but there's very limited right away, lots of concerns and a lot of needs to be met, and all of that leads to just how do you allocate the space. Lots of things going on with utilities and everything else in there. It's a very jam-packed area. So we quickly went back and reviewed whether the community had a desire for a 4-lane alternative. So basically leave it as is versus, but reconstruct it, or go to a road diet 2-way left turn lane kind of situation. And resoundingly, we've heard that they are interested in a road diet 2-way left turn lane with additional space for active transportation. So we're pivoting in that direction. We did not spend much time in that analysis. So from here on, you're going to see things that we have not shown to the public yet, because we're making sure that we're all on the same page before the project proceeds forward, and we generate a bunch of public comment on some other things. And so this is the first figure, and basically it shows you what the overall right-of-way width is along the entire corridor. And so it varies, certainly from 60 feet to over 70 feet. But the primary corridor, the main constriction is the 60-foot space that you see through here. And so basically north of 36th. So we've got 60 feet to work with, which is similar to what they faced in the last phase. So we've got a couple alternatives that we're working on. We did a design charrette with the Municipality of Anchorage and the Department of Transportation to look at a number of different things. And we're still working on things. You'll see that each of these is 65 feet in width. And the previous phase of the phase 2 north of Benson 2-way left turn lane road diet option was a 62-foot overall width. And so from these alternatives, we're looking to minimize impacts even more, or looking at decreases in overall width, no greater than this, because really we've got 60 feet to work with, and we've heard loud and clear that we want a lot of these additional spaces for active transportation and other things, but also the goal is to not take down and impact heavily every business along the way in order to make a more welcoming roadway. So you'll see here that there's a lot of things going on, and there's another discussion to come, but none of these alternatives fit within the existing right-of-way is the main point. So this is the last phase section, slightly modified in that you've got a 14-foot two-way left turn lane in the middle, but this is exactly what the public is seeing on the last phase north of Northern Lights. In that phase, there was a 13-foot two-way left turn lane in the middle. Option 2 is a similar kind of situation for a two-way left turn lane. All of them are, but then we've got the bike lane in a shared space with the sidewalk. So it's the cycle track option. It meets the MOA's design criteria manual, and there's lots of things that we could talk about pros and cons about having a bike lane behind the curb and gutter. Just varying opinions of that facility. Option 3 is a widened bike lane but decreased sidewalk. So option 1, you saw an 8-foot sidewalk, which is a shared use pathway, which facilitates both bikers and walkers, and then but has an overall decreased bike lane width. This one has a 6-foot bike lane, which uses the curb and gutter pan, or the gutter pan. But really, you're not supposed to use the gutter pan in a bike lane width conversation, and so this one widens the bike lane out to something that is minimally acceptable by most standards, but reduces your width to a 7-foot sidewalk. This one does not meet the Municipality of Anchorage design criteria design standards. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of the discussion, unless the committee would like to discuss those alternatives at more length. But really, what we've got before us is a discussion about the tip scope. So you see the highlighted space there. It says project shall not include improvements to the Minnesota intersection except ADA requirements on the east side. So within the last 3 weeks, the team has looked at what those impacts to the intersection are, or to Spenard Road, and what that means for the overall project. And so, really, we're trying to share what the impacts are, so that way we can try to deliver what AMATS is trying to provide for a vision. So it's really, we're seeking clarification. But this slide basically shows you what the future configuration of the Minnesota Spenard intersection will be after the Minnesota Pavement Preservation constructs here in the next year or two. Really, regardless of what's going on with the Minnesota Pavement Preservation Project, you've still got a situation where you've got 2 eastbound lanes that you've got to accommodate. So you've got a left, a through left, and then a through right. In the future configuration after the Minnesota Pavement Preservation is done, you'll have a left, a through, and a through right. And so we have to accept those lanes on the other side of the intersection. And really, it's just a constrained space. And so going back to the tip language, it says project shall not include improvements to the Minnesota intersection except ADA requirements on the east side. And so if the goal is to provide active transportation facilities on the east side, then we've either got huge impacts or we need to reduce scope to those active transportation improvements. So that's the gist of the situation. So first figure here is a 2-lane exception. So you're accepting 2 lanes on the east side of the intersection. So this carries you to over to 36th. And so the current configuration is accepting 2 lanes, and then those 2 lanes go all the way to 36th. And so this is basically the leave as status quo alternative of accepting 2 lanes and carrying them all the way to 36th. And then that's where you drop your lane and continue on with a 3-lane section. So the sidewalk width would remain at 4 foot. You would not have bike lanes. You would not have, additional space on the south side. Currently, in this figure off to the right, you'll see that we've widened out the space for the pathway, and we've got a bike lane on the north side. But really, the question is on the south side, what to do with that space. Moving on to the next slide. So we've got what it would look like if we included a multi-use pathway, so an 8-foot wide pathway with a 5-foot bike lane. Now, reminder that 5-foot bike lane is including 1.5 foot of gutter pan, which is not meeting standards for bike lanes, because you can't include that gutter pan in your computation of the bike lane width. Still has, on all these alternatives, it has the bike lane on the north side and the shared use pathway, but you can quickly see what's going on with our impacts. And so there's just not enough space for a lot of things. You've likely got a full acquisition of this property and this business. You got a full acquisition of this property and this business. Worst case scenario is with the bowling alley is that you could potentially be into a full acquisition. We'd have to look at, what kind of parking they'd be left with. There's no opportunity to really reallocate these spaces to other parts of the lot. There's opportunities to slide some of these parking spots over potentially, but you're absolutely going to be losing out on some of the parking on the bowling alley. And then the other thing is that you're going to have to we would have to redo some of the signal system, which would likely push us into a situation of reconstructing some of the signal system and, or doing work on the west side of the intersection. And so if we go back to the tip scope, the tip scope says project should only include improvements to the Minnesota intersection except ADA improvements to the east side. And so, if we interpret this as not being able to do some of the signal work, then potentially this alternative is already out the door. This one is already out the door. If we're limited to only things on the east side and a strict interpretation of that. Which takes us to some other alternatives. There's, this one will show is a single lane receiving lane. And I'll say that, we're only about 3 weeks into this. We've got a lot of traffic analysis to do. We've met with the municipality's traffic section. We've met with the department's traffic section. There's a need for us to do additional analysis on viability of these things. And by no means am I stepping in here and saying any of these is viable or acceptable to both the department and the municipality of Anchorage. But, basically at the end of this conversation, the question is whether or not we continue, evaluating some of these to bring everybody into the fold with whether or not we would continue on with analysis. So this one has one single receiving lane on the east side, thereby allowing the space to add in some of those active transportations and not have large impacts to right away. There's other alternatives for different situations where you could potentially drop some lanes and some other things, but all of these alternatives in this discussion require work on the west side of the intersection. So whether or not you would be dropping lanes very quickly, you know, from one side or the other, all require work on the west side. Not extensive work, but some work on the west side. We're not talking generally about, you know, major rebuilds of the intersection on the west side, but some. And the other thing to point out is that the railroad crossing to the west of this needs to be analyzed for any impacts to those operations. As part of a federally funded project, you need to analyze those wherever it is, quote unquote, near the improvements that you're working on. And certainly any of these improvements would impact back to that space, you know, with traffic queuing concerns that we would need to address. We think we've got it figured out, but there's questions to be answered there. So that leaves us with the question of the day. What is the will of AMATS, starting with the TAC, for the department or for the project to proceed with its actions on the project?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baskey. Do we have any questions or discussions from the committee members?
Mr. Chairman, Kent Colhayes, yes, I guess I have some discussion, and I want to be clear, like Mr. Baskey was, I'm not advocating for a design solution. However, I do think that it is important that the project, as the process continues, that the project be able to consider all of the options that Mr. Baskey presented, including the single lane option. And I say that because of the municipality's interests and plans that reflect and desire the full suite of pedestrian and bike lane facilities along the street. So those are my thoughts. Again, not advocating for any solution, but I would like the project to be able to consider all the options that are available, even if it means a change to the language to allow a broader look at the intersection, including any changes that might be needed on the west side.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from the committee members?
Mr. Van Hose has his hand up.
I can't see hands, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry, the screen I'm looking at, I don't have that information, so you're just gonna have to jump in here.
I'll monitor it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Roger that. Yeah, this is Todd Van Hove. I said I would just like to remind everyone, the interesting part about this is, you know, as long as I've been a member of TAC and participating in the policy committee, I can't remember a single other project that the policy committee gave such explicit and specific instructions on any other project. And so there was a significant discussion about whether or not to include improvements to the west side of this intersection. And they obviously, you've seen the answer that they provided us. And I just think, you know, here we are questioning whether they know what they're doing or not. And in normal situations, they say, go out and pave Minnesota Road. Or, you know, the tip project says, go pave Minnesota. We go pave Minnesota. We don't go back and say, are you sure that's what you meant? And in this case, we're saying, wow, you've given us very explicit instructions, and now we're questioning those very instructions. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussions from the committee members?
This is Shayna Kilcoyne. I appreciate all of these options because this is a very challenging section. And during non-COVID times, this is my daily commute and it's rough. So I don't know what kind of direction, I guess I'm wondering what kind of direction we might give right now to move forward, because I kind of feel like I see this comment from Lindsay Hayduke looking for more time to review, and I'd be curious about that too. Like, what does going down to 1 lane mean for overall traffic? And you know, I'm guessing a full acquisition of property is not what we're looking for. So what are the realistic options at this point? I guess I appreciate the options, and I don't know what kind of direction we should be giving at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Yes, this is Matt Stichik. I am curious if the option 2 shared use sidewalk, if that's possibly feasible without additional land acquisition. Does that require additional?
Sure.
additional
So
space?
I'm assuming we're talking about this one on the screen.
Well, I
Oh,
thought the one on the screen was a bike lane. Yeah,
sure.
there we go.
So okay. So option 2. So
Correct.
so this is the same overall width as you know, in a 3-lane concept as any of the other options. So they're all 65 width. Yeah. So they're all 65 feet in width in a 60-foot space. Now, you know, I would say that it is approximately the same impact on the 36th to Minnesota space.
Got it.
It doesn't save us from those acquisitions, and I'll share that the acquisitions are likely necessary on the project, and you know, currently shown in the tip is $2.5 million, $2.5 million in right-of-way acquisition. We're starting to get these drawings on paper, and we're starting to see what the overall impacts are. And $2.5 million is unlikely to be enough to accommodate a 65-foot width roadway and you know, active transportation. And so we're already into full acquisitions likely, and the question is how many, and how can we reduce the overall width to meet everyone's needs while also not taking out every business along Spenard Road. It's a constrained space.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baskey. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Yeah, Kent again. Mr. Baskey, could you put up the single receiving lane option again?
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to look at it one more time. Thank you.
Sure. And so I'll point out in the left side here, we've got a 70-foot existing right of way, and you have 71.5 feet of need. You know, with that, you could push things north or south, but you're really basically fitting within the existing corridor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Okay, do we have anybody from the policy committee that would like to comment or have questions?
Weddleton's here. I have some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you.
So you know, and I think Todd, you had said that, or someone said we're questioning the policy committee. I think that's someone who's sitting on that. I feel free to question things that come out of the policy committee. This is big bucks and very impactful on the city and all these roads, and it's always good to be thinking about them, as I know you guys do. You know, my recollection on why there was a constraint on here was to kind of remove that, there's a concept of doing, one way here and then use 36th. And that was very controversial. And as I recall, the intent was to pull that controversy away so that we could get something going in this area. And the primary, the main part of this to really get right as a walkable, multimodal area is this section that would really be McCain Loop North. It's all important, but you have so much stuff going on at Chugach Way soon, and with Cookland Housing's homes going in there, that was kind of the core thing. It's like, let's get that right, and then not get bogged down in this, one-way couplet thing that was discussed. And so I think that's why that constraint was there. It's almost like we'll deal with that later. So I think, and if someone could correct me on that, but it would be whatever we do in this real difficult stretch here is don't do anything that would preclude further work on that couplet idea. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody else from the policy committee on, or? I don't think we do. Okay, so we have, go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, I believe that's Mr. Weddleton's the only member on.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Welton. We do have some public comment in the chat. So help me out here, Craig. Do we typically want to read that, or do we just want to direct people to take a look at it? Or
typically we ask for comments if they have any, but since they already have it in there, I would just I can read them. Let me go over to it now. Okay, so there are two comments, both from Lindsay Haduk. It says, I appreciate seeing these alternatives in this Spenard Road presentation and would like more time to review it. For comments, I'd like to see this project also include future improvements to the Spenard-Chugach Way intersection rather than just bypassing it without active transportation connections. I'd also like to factor in signal changes at Spenard and Minnesota. And then her second comment is, I'd also request amending the tip to allow for considerations to signalization, lane configuration, and railroad impacts on the west side of Minnesota Drive.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just double check with Christine to see if there's anyone else in the Teams live chat that from the public who has a comment.
Yes, I'm doing that right now. And
great. We do have one more comment in the chat from Lindsay again. It says the Spenard Community Council does not support the couplet as Mr. Weddleton is referring to.
Okay, thank you. I'm being told that we're gonna not pause, or we're gonna pause just a second here to see if there's anybody because of the delay that might want to testify or to have a discussion on this, and then we'll move on. Good. Okay, we're good. So I think this concludes our 6B item. And I think we are back to number 5, action items. On the agenda, item 5A, AMATS 2019-22 TIP Amendment number 2, comments, response, summary. Craig, will you be presenting?
I will. So until we get it posted, I'll just kind of wing it. So we had our comment and response public comment period out for 30 days. We received the 9 comments that are in the comment response summary. The majority of those were comments from for changes in the program, mostly for balancing. We had a comment from the Alaska Railroad and some from the Public Transportation Department, where they had changes to their 5307 funds. It is in table 10, I believe, which is, as you remember, outside the AMATS allocation. So it just has to be included in the tip due to it being federal US DOT funds. So there was that. We had some changes for the HSIP program, which is again part of the state's allocation that they get to decide, but we have to include it in the tip. And so that is included there. And then we have the changes in tables 2, 3, and 4, which is the AMATS allocation. The only significant one, I believe, would be the deletion of a project, which is the C Street Ocean Dock Road Ramp and Intersection Improvements Project. I believe the DOT doesn't believe that one is something that is necessary now with the other changes that are there. I know Mr. Starzyk is on and he could probably provide more clarification with that, but basically those were the comments that we received from on specific tables. And then Christine, if you could go over to the comment response summary now. We also received 4 comments from the Rabbit Creek Community Council. I believe it's 4, might be 5. Several of them related to the, let's see, it is 4. So several of them related to specific comments on projects that are in the TIP, which again, we're a planning entity, not a design entity. So we're suggesting that we will share those comments with the project managers for those projects. And then there was the comment regarding Mountain Air Drive, which I think is a pretty good suggestion. Currently, that project includes language that says recommend separated pathway. And as they say, there are other projects that specifically, instead of saying recommend a separated pathway or something like that, it says the project would also include non-motorized improvements. And that seems like a good change to make. Instead of specify what the type of non-motorized improvement is, we would put recommend non-motorized improvements. So, or would include non-motorized improvements. So that comment number 5 seemed like a good idea to us. So happy to answer questions on those. We can go through those in great detail if you'd like, but those were the comments that were received, and we're asking you today to recommend concurrence with the staff comments and move it on to the policy committee for approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lyon. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Hello, this is Adiemi Alimi from DEC. I already sent this message to Craig, but I just want to reiterate here that regarding the deletion of the project in the TIP amendment, I would want or like Craig to make sure that we get the consensus from the Air Quality Conformity Interagency Committee before the end of April, because if we wait until May, the committee may say we'll need to do another conformity determination. So it is important we get the consensus from this committee regarding the deletion of the project before the end of April.
Mr. Chair, so this is Craig. That's a really good point. Basically, what we have is we did an air quality conformity consultation team meeting for the air quality for the original Amendment 2, and they agreed that we could move forward as it is, and they provided that determination. The change that's being suggested to delete the one project, we need to make sure that they're okay with that. And so I had the discussion with Cindy Heil from DEC. And she suggested that we send out a note to the interagency consultation team that just suggests, hey, this is the project that we're deleting. We believe this deletion would not adversely affect the air quality conformity for AMATS, given that we are now a limited maintenance area, and we just want the interagency consultation team's concurrence with that. There is the time constraint because they are moving to, the EPA is moving to a new standard, and they're doing that 1st of May, and so we want to get the email concurrence from the consultation team as soon as possible. I did send that information along to Mr. Stichik, and hopefully we'll be sending that note out to the interagency consultation team momentarily, and then we'll get the response back and be able to move forward and agree that this doesn't require a new conformity determination because the one that we have on it is good to go. So hopefully we're taking care of Mr. Alimi's concerns, same concerns that Ms. Heil had, so we should be okay.
And this is Matt Stichik. I'll add that, yes, I am seeking that consensus from the interagency consultation team and intend to have a response prior to the policy committee meeting.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions, comments from policy committee? Anybody from the policy committee on?
Yeah, Weddleton, and let's put something out there for thought. Now, Mountain Air, it's an important connection that I've supported. The use of the bond money as the match was under a part of code that is for life safety egress roads. And which the implication is that they're fairly limited in the way they're built, and even possibly it can be understood to be just enough to handle, fire trucks and other equipment and evacuation. Lots of cars leaving, not so much as normal municipal road, and I don't know, and that may not work with an AMATS formula. Maybe you have criteria that are beyond there, but it's kind of an interesting challenge here, because the one part of code is kind of saying that it's just for life safety egress, but our normal road projects are much more inclusive, like adding non-motorized features. I don't have an answer, I'm just kind of putting that out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weddleton. The public was invited to comment by notifying us of their desires to comment, but do we have any? Okay, we don't have any at this time, but we are going to pause here in case we have any public comments on this item. Okay, we are moving along then. They've indicated no public comments. So what is the will of the committee on this item? I need somebody to make a motion on this one.
So this is Todd. I'm willing to make a motion, but before I do, I was trying to ask earlier and I was on mute. Can we move this under the policy committee and assume that the determination will be presented to the policy committee at the same time so that they can make final decision? Is that what we're assuming here?
Are you asking about the air quality determination?
Yes.
Oh yeah, as Matt said, that's the plan, to get it before then. So
very good.
Yeah.
With that said, then Todd Van Hove, I move to approve and move on to the policy committee for. I'm sorry, I make the motion to move to the policy committee for approval of the amendment.
Yeah, this is Adiemi Halimi. I second.
Okay, so we got to move to approve 5A with a second. Do we have any changes or discussion on this? Okay, do we have any objections to the motion? All right, hearing none, that motion's approved. We are moving on to agenda item 5B, AMATS operating agreement update. Craig, can you present, please?
Yep. There will be two changes that we have proposed in this operating agreement revision. As you know, the policy committee last month approved the change from the Citizens Advisory Committee to the Community Advisory Committee. So we have to reflect that in our operating agreement, change the word citizen to community. In addition, in the federal certification review we had put in parameters for what percentage would constitute an amendment versus what would constitute an administrative modification. And the number I had used was 75%. I had found that in some MPO in South Carolina at one point. I I cannot find it now. And basically the Fed said, if you can show us someone else that's doing it, then we'll accept that higher number, but otherwise you have to go with a lower number. So I was able to find a place that had 50%. And so that is the threshold now for changes. And that changes. So if you are adding funds into a project in the TIP or deleting funds in the project in the TIP, and it constitutes more than 50% of the total cost of the project in the 4 years of the TIP, it would have to move to an amendment. If it's under 50% of the cost, then it would it could be an administrative modification. So those are the two changes that we're doing, changing it to community and the 50% change. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee on this item?
Yeah, this is Todd. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my first question is, do we, per Sant, our operating agreement, section 19, have the actual written amendment that represents approval from FHWA and FTA with this change?
Are you asking me if I have a written documentation that said 50% is okay?
On either changes, both changes actually.
The 50% and the Citizens Advisory Committee change?
Correct.
Okay, I have the language regarding the 50% change. I don't have anything regarding the Citizens Advisory Committee. This is a change that the Policy Committee made, and we then would send it on to them to just let them know.
Correct, but per section 19 in our operating agreement, it says once changes are made to the operating agreement and approved by the Policy Committee, they are to be forwarded on to FDA and FHWA for approval.
I guess that's what we'll do here. Once the Policy Committee decides what they want to do with these changes, then we would send it on to FHWA and FTA.
Policy Committee has already approved it. I'm confused on the process. I guess it's what I'm asking, Craig, is a process question. How, that was my first question, is process. I mean, according to our own operating agreement, once a Policy Committee approves these amendments, then they're supposed to go to FHWA and FTA for agreement and processing. And then my second question would be, where, as a citizen, or sorry to use that term, where as a person who is looking on the AMATS website, can I go find the language in the original agreement?
In the original operating agreement?
Correct.
I'd have to pull up the website right now, but we have a part of our website that shows our governing documents, and the operating agreement, policies and procedures, those are in there. Those are posted. Typically what we do is we go through the Policy Committee. If they approve something, then we have to figure out what are the specific changes and et cetera to the operating agreement. I guess theoretically we could have done those all at the same time, but we waited for the Policy Committee to approve the change, and then we have to go specifically modify the operating agreement.
Well, I think that's another procedural question, because the operating agreement is an agreement signed by the mayor and the governor. It is my suggestion that that language never change. You can do amendments all day long, but those amendments get attached to that operating agreement. They don't change the actual wording in that agreement.
Well, the original operating agreement was signed by Governor Knowles and Mayor Wirtz in, I believe, 2001. We have revised it probably half a dozen times in this manner. So that has been what the Policy Committee has approved in the 18 years I've been here. I guess it's possible we've been doing it wrong all along, but that has been the method that the Policy Committee has approved in all the revisions we've done in the past.
Okay, one more question.
They are just that, revisions. They're not they're not things that connote a redesignation, which would require a new signature from the current mayor and the current governor. They're not that. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee? Okay, any questions or comments from anyone from the policy committee on?
Oh, nothing from Weddleton, thank you.
Thank you. So the public was invited to comment and notify us of their desire to comment on this item. Did we receive any? Okay, so we didn't receive any, but we're going to pause here again. So. Okay, looks like we're good. So what is the will of the committee on this item?
This is Todd Van Hove. I move to table this item until such time that an amendment can be produced that shows agreement FHPA and FDA.
This is Ademi Alimi, a second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussions or changes to?
Mr. Chair, this is Craig. Can I just ask a clarifying question? You're wanting to table this until we get some sort of agreement from the feds. I'm not sure exactly what we're waiting for from them because we haven't sent them anything yet. And we wouldn't usually do that until we have an agreement or we have a modification to our operating agreement. So just want to clarify what we're asking here.
Yeah, this is Todd. What I guess, back to my original conversation, it's my understanding that the policy committee has already agreed to this. And we're in the process of making a change to it. And I think before we make the change, we need to get the approval. If that's how I understand it.
I guess I would clarify that the way we have always done it is we bring something to the policy committee. They decided that in the form of a memo, but they didn't have a business item before them with an operating agreement change, which is what we have today. We have an actual operating agreement for you with the lined out mark for citizens and underlined and in red for community. And so this would be the official operating agreement revision that we would then be taking to the policy committee. Once they approve it, we would then send it to the feds for their concurrence. So that's been our practice. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item?
This is Michelle. I guess I just have a question that if we table it and it hasn't gone to the policy committee, can it still get moved on to the feds? And what does this do to any timing for anything of important, like of substance?
Craig, can you jump in there and try and answer this?
I honestly don't have a clue. I will be 100% honest with you. I don't have an operating agreement amendment to send to them. I have a memo that shows that the policy committee agreed to change that, and what we would do after those changes have been approved by the policy committee is we would then change the documents that say citizens to community. And one of those documents is the operating agreement. One of those documents is the CAC bylaws. Another thing that we would probably should have been brought here today, but regardless, this is the specific operating agreement change that I would then send on to the feds. I don't really have anything to send to them, so I don't have any more. I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss.
And if we table this, can it still go to the policy committee so they can move it forward if they choose to?
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but as occurred with the original citizen advisory committee change to the community advisory committee, as you remember, the TAC tabled it and then the policy committee brought it up. So policy committee can decide they want to bring this up, operating agreement change, if they want to at their meeting in 2 weeks or any other time in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from the committee on this? Okay. Are there any objections to the approval of the motion to table this item?
This is Michelle. I object.
Matt Stichik, I object as well.
Okay, at this point, why don't we go and take a roll call vote here? I'm going to ask Craig to go through and do a roll call vote on this
Okay.
item.
Mr. Van Hove.
Nay.
Okay, just so I clarify, so I believe the motion is to table it, so a yes vote would approve the tabling of it.
Yes.
Right.
Are we voting on the table or are we voting on the?
Your motion is to table this item, and so we're voting on whether or not to table it.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification. My vote is yes.
Mr. Stitchick.
Negative, no.
Okay, Ms. Kilcoyne.
Nay.
Mr. Lindemood.
Yes.
Miss Acton is not here. Miss McNulty.
No.
Mr. Boland.
Yes.
Mr. Rebuffo.
Yes.
Mr. Colhayes.
No.
Mr. Alimi.
Yes.
And Mr. Craps.
I'm going to vote no.
It is tied 5-5. And I can't remember now, Ms. Blake, if you're able to tell us if it ties, I can't remember what that means.
I've been informed we've never had a tie, so hang on a minute here.
I vaguely remember parliamentary procedure, and I thought if it is a tie, it fails, but that's vague.
We are double checking here, so just give us a few minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Shall we table it until we know what a tie means?
I'm willing to change my vote to a, this is Matt Stitchick. I'm willing to change my vote to a yes and let the policy committee deal with it.
Through the chair. On Robert's rules,
I'm trying to start. There we go. All right.
says a tie vote occurs when 50%, you still have the echo. Vote in favor and 50% vote against. No one receives a majority vote. If there's no way to break the tie vote, the motion is lost.
Okay, so who jumped in there with?
This is Matt Stitchick. I will vote yay for tabling.
Okay, so with that change, we are going to table the item. And it looks like we are on to project and plan updates.
Mr. Chair, Kent Colhayes.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to move to reconsider item 5A, please.
Who did it?
Mr. Colhayes.
This is Michelle. I second the motion.
It's gonna echo again. Through the chair, to motion to reconsider, you have to be on the prevailing side.
He's asking to change, to reconsider the motion on the TIP amendment, not on this document.
Oh, not on the table?
No, not on the tabling, on the TIP amendment.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion to bring up item 5A again from Mr. Colhayes and seconded by Ms. McNulty. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. You guys are throwing me for a loop here. So Is there any discussion or comments on this motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, Kent again. Yes, my fault. I missed my opportunity when we voted on 5A. I believed at the time we were voting just on the comments that were received, and my reason for reconsidering is I would like to move that we amend the language in the project description to allow the project to consider improvements on the west side of Minnesota as may be required to accommodate multimodal transportation along the project corridor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colhase. Any other discussion or comments on the motion?
That's not item 5A.
Was that a question? Could you clarify that for me?
This is Matt Stichik, but as I understand it, Kent is
he's asking to bring
proposing a motion on 6A.
No, he wants it on 5A. He wants to
5A.
reconsider the action on the TIP amendment to change some language on this Spenard Road project.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, any other questions, discussion on this item for the committee? Okay, are there any objections to the motion?
Is this just the motion to reconsider, or is this the motion to actually make the change to the tip?
This is the motion to reconsider and go back to 5A.
Okay. Thank you.
So do we have any objections to the motion? Okay, hearing none, then that motion's approved. So we are going to step back to item 5A again. And I'm assuming we're going to need a motion for approval, and then we can go into any type of modifications you want to go to. So can I get a motion to approve 5A again, and then we'll go into any amendments that you want to make?
Yeah, so moved.
Who's that?
Brian
Lindemood,
second.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so now we're back to 5A with an approval, and discussions or changes.
Kent Colhase again, Mr. Chair, move to amend the project language, specifically the second sentence, to say projects shall include improvements to the Minnesota intersection as may be required to accommodate multimodal transportation along the project corridor.
Okay, thank you.
This is Michelle. If that needs a second, I second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussions on the amendment to 5A from Mr. Colhase?
This is Luke Boland. I don't know if that necessarily accomplishes exactly what we might want to do with the project. Not looking into a lot of the details when it comes to the traffic impacts with the options that we've presented today. It might be a little bit cleaner just to delete that whole second sentence regarding the improvements to the Minnesota intersection, except ADA requirements. If that sentence is removed, it doesn't really restrict our options, but it also doesn't require us to do anything to the intersection.
Okay, any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Okay, are there any objections to approving the amendment that Mr. Colhase put forth and Ms. McNulty seconded?
I would, Luke Boland, I would object based on my comment.
Okay. All right, why don't we go, Mr. Lyon, why don't we do a roll call vote for this again, please?
Okay, so the amendment is to add the language Mr. Colhase suggested regarding the Spenard Road project. So, Mr. Van Hove. If you are speaking, you are on mute.
Sorry, muting. What, I'm sorry, clarification, what are we voting on?
Sure. So Mr. Amendment has an amendment, or Mr. Colhase has an amendment to modify the language in the Spenard Road Corridor project that basically would allow some non-motorized improvements. I didn't get it all down to read it. So if you say yes, you want to approve that. If you say no, it leaves it as is right now.
No.
Yeah, let's pause here for a minute, Mr. Line. Kent, could you go ahead and read your amendment one more time for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. My amendment as it stands now is projects shall include improvements to the Minnesota intersection as needed to accommodate multimodal transportation improvements on the east side along the project corridor. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to do this, but I'm new to parliamentary procedure. I would have no objection to Mr. Boland's language change and Mr. Boland's proposal. So I could withdraw my amendment if that's appropriate, and I or somebody else could make another motion.
Okay, now you got me on parliamentary procedure. I don't know about if you presented the amendment, how I'm pretty sure you can withdraw it.
I think probably the easiest thing to do is to submit the amendment to the amendment as a friendly amendment. If the person with the original motion and the second both approve, then we move forward. Otherwise, we have to vote. He needs to amend the amendment with a first and a second, then we discuss that, then we go back to the amendment, then we go back to the whole damn thing. We'll be here all day.
So, this is Kent Colhase again. So the friendly amendment approach would be what? I'm sorry, help me out.
I believe the friendly amendment, if I'm not mistaken, is if you're okay with the friendly amendment and the second is okay with the friendly amendment, then that winds up being the amendment. Okay, so Kent Colhase again. I, as the mover, have no objection to the friendly amendment, which would delete the second sentence of the project description. And then I guess I believe it. Then I believe you said that it would then fall to my second, who was Ms. McNulty.
Yeah, she would need to be okay with the friendly amendment as well.
I'm okay with it. I second it.
Okay, so where we stand now is the amendment has been changed to just delete the line about the Minnesota and Spenard intersection. That's where I believe we are. Is there any discussion on that item or clarification that we need to have on this? Or if someone wants to pipe in that we are not following parliamentary procedures here, please step in and let me know. Okay, so as it stands now, the amendment is to delete that line out of the do I have anybody objecting to that amendment? Okay, so that amendment's approved. And we are back to the main motion on 5A again. Does anybody object to the approval of 5A with the amendment? Okay, hearing none, that's approved. And I think we are, okay, Craig, help me out. Where am I at now?
You're still in Anchorage, Alaska.
We're on 6A, right?
We are, well, we're actually on, are there any other action items?
Oh, and then, are there any other action items?
No further action items, sir. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So now we are on 6A, project and plan update Seward to Glen Highway PEL. Gary, are you going to present that for me?
I'm not sure if someone else was going to, but basically the question was asked at the policy committee, and the response from Mr. Van Hove was that they are under discussions and negotiations with the chosen contractor. I don't know if there is any more information to share or if he was going to share anything else, but that's what I know.
This is Todd Van Hope. You're absolutely right, Craig. The information I presented at the policy committee, thankfully, was correct, and because it wasn't, I didn't have an opportunity to prepare for it. But yes, the document has been prepared, the negotiations have been completed, and we're currently finalizing some interesting issues with the contract, and the contract itself is in our contract section being prepared, and it should be ready for implementation very soon.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion from the committee on this? Any questions from the policy committee member?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from the public? No? You want to pause? All right, we're going to pause for a second here, just in case somebody has a question on this from the public. All right, I got a thumbs up. So we are on to general information items, 7A.
COVID relief funding update.
That's correct.
As you know, we are looking at the possibility of about 11.2329 million in funding to an urbanized area over 200,000, which would be the AMATS area. And we are, I'm waiting for written documentation that we can go ahead and allocate that. I contacted Adam Moser, who's the statewide MPO coordinator for DOT down in Juneau, to get an update, and he said that they are still in negotiations with the legislature. There's a lot of, as you probably read in the paper recently, there's a lot of relief funding coming into the state, and so the legislature has interest in as much of that as they can get, and so they haven't come to a crystal clear decision on that yet. So we're still waiting on that. One thing, as I think, as you remember from when I presented before, is that there were there's some changes to what we could spend our funding on, and one of the possible things would be M&O, maintenance, people, et cetera, as opposed to just projects. I was told by Mr. Moser that it's kind of seems like fairly clear that that is not what U.S. DOT and federal highways think this should be used for. They'd rather see it on projects. And so they have suggested that you're going to have a really good reason for spending these funds on M&O as opposed to projects. Doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just going to be pretty challenging. So that's just information to keep in your mind as we go forward. As soon as we get something written that tells us we can go ahead to allocate those funds, we'll bring that to you. Again, it has a expiration date of 2024, September 2024. So we do have some time to move forward with those. So that's that funding update that I know of, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Questions or comments from the committee on this? Yep, this information item? Questions, comments from policy committee members online?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anybody from the public? Oh, we're pausing again. Sorry.
Hi. Yeah. Oh, sure, I'm on mute.
Okay, thumbs up on that. Okay, Mr. Lyon, can you go on to the AMATS newsletter, please?
Yes, I want Christine to share her amazing amount of work and impressive document that she's created.
So if you are at our AMATS website, if you click on that picture at the top, it'll bring you to our first quarterly newsletter, and we'll just show you how this one's laid out. They'll typically be laid out the same way, but we're looking for feedback from everybody on this first one. So you scroll down, you'll see this bar at the top, which will tell you the sections. So just first, the highlight of sections in this issue, a message from our fearless leader, and then we'll go into committee news. So all of the different committees, we go over just what happened in the first quarter. If there's any seats to fill, we'll highlight that. There's one seat on the BPAC. Spotlight, we're going to spotlight staff or even committee members. So hopefully they'll participate as well. Right now we have Aaron and his trusted companion, Dozer. In community, we're highlighting a winter bike tour that Joni did with Donovan, and to introduce Julius from the state bike and peg coordinator to all of our facilities. So we included a map of where they rode to look at winter facilities and what the challenges were. Plans and programs, so any updates that are happening in the primary programs. Right now Aaron has started making a plan and sent out the RFP for the 2050 MTP. A TIP amendment 2 that we're just discussing, 30-day public reviews on this newsletter. Non-motorized plans, so a couple charts to discuss some survey results that we had in the open house that Joni prepared in February. Highlighting the Spenard Road corridor plan that's out. And then the Title 21 parking that long range and current planning are working on, they presented to 3 of the AMATS committees this quarter. So we are highlighting that project. And if anybody wants further information where they can get it. And there will always be a transit section. So transit has fat tire bike racks on the buses now. They did a big campaign for that. They had a rider survey to see how riders have been impacted since the pandemic started and some of the results from that survey. And then their system report card has just been released for 2020. And then lastly, we'll have just a transportation 101 topic. This one's simple. What is an MPO? Talk about where it started and then how they're set up differently. The Fairbanks MPO is freestanding, and the AMATS MPO here in Anchorage is within the municipality's planning department. We'll highlight the upcoming committee meetings for the next quarter, and then plug joining our newsletter. And then lastly, but very important, we have a survey. If you click on that, it's just a 5-question survey to tell us what you think and give us feedback so that we can always improve it. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee on this? Okay, does anybody from our policy committee have questions or comments on this?
Oh, it's very nice, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Welton. Okay, we're going to have to pause here again. We don't have anybody in the queue to comment, but we're going to want to pause here for a second. Okay, we have a thumbs up. Now the floor is open to comments from the committee. Anybody from the committee?
Mr. Chair, Kent Colhays again. I just want to thank the committee for indulging my non-familiarity with Robert's Rules of Order. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's seconded by me. I appreciate all the help I can get. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, well, thank you all for your participation. We're gonna gavel out and adjourn the meeting. It is 3:56. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks all.